A report conducted by Investopedia came out to show that over a person's lifetime, it is now estimated to cost $5 million in order to fulfill what they call the American dream. But what's interesting is that Georgetown University conducted a study that found bachelor degree holders earn a median of $2.8 million over their lifetime, and that lifetime earnings typically rise with each additional level of education, where a full year worker with a high school diploma came out to be 1.6 million earnings. Those with an associate's came out to be 2 million, those with a master's earned a median of 3.2 million, and that doctoral degree holders earned $4 million, where professional degree holders came out to be 4.7 million. Now realize that more education doesn't always mean you'll earn more money, and based on the data I'm about to show you, even in a household with 2 working adults, achieving the American dream would still be incredibly difficult regardless of your income level. Knowing that, before we dive deep into the data, my name is Sully, and all I ask is if you do find value in this video, that you consider hitting the like and subscribe button for future content like this. With that said, let's first go over what the report fully shows. And so the first thing to note is that much of this data is coming from many credible sources like the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Freddie Mac, Experian, or the US Department of Education, to name a few. But first, understand that this idea of the American dream dates back to 1931, when it was first described as the American dream is that dream of a land in which life should be better and richer and fuller for everyone, with opportunity for each according to ability or achievement. Now keep in mind that all the numbers I'm about to show you were adjusted to June 2025 dollars using the Consumer Price Index for all items, so the estimated $5 million that you're about to see reflects what it would actually cost today to cover these expenses over a full lifetime. Which it's also worth noting that many of these costs are based on a household with 2 adults, and I'll mention more on the exact details as I break down each section throughout the video. But to first list off each expense on the report, the largest one was calculated to be retirement, where they estimated a total of roughly $1,636,000 needed per individual in order to retire comfortably. Following that is the cost to own a home, where they estimate a total of $957,000, followed by continuously owning a new car being $900,000, to then raising 2 children and paying for their college, coming out to be a total of $876,000, then healthcare at an estimated $414,000, where we can then see yearly vacations that comes out to be $180,000, then having pets at $39,000, and then a wedding that is $38,000. That makes up a total of just over $5 million that it would cost you today in order to live the American dream. Now, of course, some of those you may need more or less depending on your situation and personal interest, but as a whole, understand that each point already considers the impact of inflation, because the prices that you're seeing today will only increase over time, where it's reported that healthcare costs rose at a 5 to 6% annual increase over the past 2 decades alone. But to offset rising costs, understand that your income typically increases over time, and that data from the Social Security Administration shows how the average and median wage for US workers whose earnings are reported to them steadily increase over time. In fact, the median annual wage in 2004 was $23,355, whereas in the year of 2023, that number is roughly $43,000, which means the median wage grew just over 3% annually over the past 2 decades, which is similar to the average inflation rate. But to dive deeper into how they retrieved these numbers, let's first start off by looking at retirement, where they estimated $1.6 million of a lifetime cost. Now for this, they estimated that an adult above 65 would need $63,000 per year in order to last 20 years of retirement, which they also account for a 2.5% annual increase in inflation. But for that data, there are 2 factors that I have to add in here, because typically, being on the safer end of things for retirement planning, one should ideally project their savings to last 30 years rather than 20, which is also typically recommended by professionals and general guidelines like the 4% rule. And of course, this number would also change depending on when you retire. But if you extend that length from 20 years to 30 years, this would make the total amount needed much higher so that it can last you even longer. However, the second point to consider is that the amount that you will actually need to withdraw from your retirement savings will likely be lower than $63,000 per year for the average person, since you may have other income sources like a pension, Social Security, or royalties that can definitely reduce how much you need to rely on your retirement savings. Of course, that also depends on your lifestyle and how you spend, but to add on the retirement topic, data recommended from T. Rowe Price suggests to have 11 times your salary by the age of 65 in order to retire at 65. In other words, if you were 65 today and your salary is $100,000 per year, you'll likely have enough to retire if your retirement savings are at least $1.1 million. A big reason this is a general guideline recommended by many professionals is because the report by the SSA shows how many financial advisors say you will need about 70 to 80% of your pre-retirement income, including Social Security benefits, investments, and personal savings, in order to live comfortably in retirement. So based on your salary, say it's $100,000 at age 65, it is estimated because of your lifestyle habits, where you could probably live off of $70,000 to $80,000 in retirement, including any potential benefits in that. But knowing how important it is to save for retirement, the next biggest cost is owning a home at $957,000. Now, like I said, some factors you may or may not want to even get involved with because you may never care to own a home, but for many, this could be a true goal of the idea of living the American dream. But the problem for many just getting started is that home prices have been steadily rising, and with high mortgage rates recently, owning a home could be very costly. In fact, many studies lately have been showing how renting is becoming increasingly more affordable than buying in most large US metros, where the Federal Reserve's economic database shows how the median sales price of a house sold in the US is currently around $410,000. And besides the need to put down 20%, which is close to $100,000 after all things considered, based on Freddie Mac's recent average for the 30-year mortgage rate of 6.22%, that means you would see a monthly payment of $2,300, and that over the lifetime of the loan, that adds up to be more than $700,000. And when you include the down payment, that total cost is pretty much double the sale price of the home, which, crazy enough, that doesn't even include maintenance or utility costs, which could easily add up fast, and that would likely make the average cost much higher than what they reported. But aside from owning a home, many of course would love to have their own vehicle, and their study states that a lifetime of buying and financing 2 new cars every 10 years at today's prices comes out to be roughly $900,000. As you can see, they state the total includes all fixed expenses for a 2-car household that include monthly payments, insurance, and maintenance costs. Now, they get these numbers by saying you do this from age 22 to 75, so that's 53 years, or 5.3 total new cars per adult, where they state a new car average loan amount is $41,000 with an average interest rate of 6.7% and an average term of 68 months according to Experian, where this would yield a total of $267,000 in total car costs over 53 per individual. They then add an average annual maintenance cost of $900 from Consumer Affairs estimates, and then insurance premiums of $2,500 from a NerdWallet report, where the final outcome is $450,000 per adult. But one thing to point out though is that the resale value of the cars are not included in the calculation. But 2 areas I do not believe were added into this calculation are yearly registration fees and fuel cost that can both add up significantly, especially when you look at it over years. All in all, if we look at the data reported by AAA, they state that currently the annual cost to own and operate a vehicle is just over $11,000 per year, which is just about $960 per month. And if we multiply that number by 2, assuming a 2-car household, then that would be $22,000 per year, and for 53 years, that would end up being just over $1.1 million, which is higher than what the report showed. But many costs change over time, and the report doesn't include the resale of the vehicle, so a $900,000 estimate for a 2-car household throughout a lifetime, I would say, is roughly accurate for the average person that wants a vehicle that can go from point A to point B, but for someone that also prioritizes a budget. After that, we then have the goal of raising 2 children and paying for college that is estimated to be $876,000. Now, because this can be so different depending on your interest, just understand that they've reported the total cost of childcare for 2 children, including infant and toddler care, and then expenses as they grow through preschool, through high school, transportation, and meals. It's stated that you'll need close to $650,000 just to cover those necessities. And then for the college aspect, while roughly 20% of students take loans or receive financial aid, the overall cost for sending 2 kids to college today exceeds $230,000. All in all, these costs definitely vary, but let's now go over the next cost, that is healthcare, at $414,000. Now, this cost is estimated per individual for expenses from the age of 22 to 85, and that this is something to really take a priority on because the federal long-term care insurance program states the national average cost for a semi-private room in a nursing home is $112,000 per year. And if inflation continues to average 2.5% per year, in 20 years, the annual cost of care in a nursing home could increase from $112,000 to almost $186,000 per year. They also state how assisted living averaged $66,000 per year, equivalent to $5,500 per month, where home care is estimated to average $51,000 per year based off of paying $33 per hour, 6 hours per day, 5 days per week. So for those that are eligible to use the account that is an HSA, I highly recommend that, and I'll also have another video I created on Fidelities, which is the one I personally use and favor most, all that linked in the description below. Knowing that, after health, we then have yearly vacations that are estimated to be $180,000. And so according to Alliance, this number is based on the average annual household vacation of $2,800 per year that was sampled from a survey of over 2,000 American adults, where the vacation is defined as a leisure trip of at least 1 week to a place that is 100 miles or more from home, and that the total cost is calculated assuming you do this from age 22 to 85. And fun fact, but since the drop from the COVID pandemic, Americans have been spending more and more on vacations, doubling the numbers of amounts spent from only a few years ago. But aside from that, we then have pets at a total cost of $39,000, where they showed how 2/3 of US households own pets, and 2/3 of those they surveyed say it's a non-negotiable. And so what they did here was use data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics that showed annual costs to own both a cat and a dog, where they state the price of almost $40,000 comes from owning 1 cat and 1 dog, and the average lifespan they use is 13 years from the dog and 11 years for the cat. But like I said at the beginning of this video, the prices for all these may vary greatly because you may be a crazy cat lady, or you may not want any pets at all. So this also leads me into the last choice that one can make that is on this list, and that is to have a wedding at an average cost of $38,000. Now, interestingly enough, they estimated that this price declined from 2024's estimates that came from the Knott's Wedding Study, showing the cost for an entire ceremony, reception, and engagement ring. All in all, some of these categories you may very well spend differently on, but the 8 that were mentioned from the report came out to be the highest ones picked in their surveys, which ended up totaling $5 million in cost over a lifetime. Now, no matter what degree you have or do not have, the most important thing to understand is that properly saving and investing for your future is crucial to accomplish many of the goals that Americans refer to as living the dream. Because of that, I will mention my new startup InvestLane, because our mission is to help inform others on financial topics on how to save and invest wisely in order to build lasting wealth. Now, if you want to earn more interest on your cash sitting or start investing into the market, I'll have direct links below to some of the top high yield savings accounts or brokerage accounts that are available in the market. And as always, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and notifications button for future content like this.